Yo, what is up guys, Grim here, and in today's video we're going to be taking on the main question I've been getting asked, and that is, oh boy, are you excited about the bow buffs? And I think there's quite a lot to talk about here. In the early game and the end game, we're going to be covering both. Let's cover the bow buffs. Now, unfortunately, while the buffs are pretty cool, they are not exclusively buffs. There was a little bit of a transaction that went on here, and we're going to cover both sides of the transaction, and it's going to inform you whether or not it's going to be better or worse to league start and play bows in the end game. So what was this transaction? Well, we have gained 2 arrows. One is in the form of a brand new cluster up the top here, which is 4 points and in range of timeless jewels for you end game players, and also easily accessible for fresh builds. Any build that is ranger is pretty much always going to path on the outside here. Got to get those bow nodes, and you're going to come up here eventually to get all the juice up here anyway. So pretty much every ranger is going to have access to that wheel there, which is pretty damn good. Extra projectiles, pretty nice. In addition to that, we also have changed Master Fletcher to having an additional projectile, which is pretty damn cool as well. Projectiles are a really big deal, namely in the early game as well as mid game for bow builds. We'll get to that though. But what did we lose in exchange for these changes? Because they didn't come free. This node used to do something else. So overall, we gained 2 projectiles potentially. We'll get to that. But what was the loss? At what cost? Well, this node here, Master Fletcher, it used to provide 15% increased attack speed, 20% increased accuracy, and 20% increased projectile speed, which when you actually have the mastery, which pretty much every bow player is going to take, is about 20% increased damage. So overall, you did lose a lot of damage from that node. That arrow, that is a steep cost, baby, to get that arrow. Obviously you get a lot of quality of life and utility and feel goodness from that arrow, but man, is that a lot of damage to lose. And you're going to feel that in the early game when you don't have insane gear. It's definitely going to be noticeable, especially when you're in that level 50 to 60 to 70 range, when you will pick up these nodes to try and get that massive power spike. You will still get the arrow, but you will not get the damage, and the attack speed is especially going to probably feel a little bit weird. So that's definitely a bit of a downside. Now, the nodes that lead up to it also have been reduced in power. So previously, these used to be nodes which granted 10% increased damage and 4% increased attack speed. Now they're only 5% increased attack speed. So you traded 10% damage for 1% attack speed. That's not a very good trade in my opinion. So, that's definitely enough there, and it's across 3 nodes. So in total, you lost 30% damage there, which kind of sucks. And then on this entry node, you also lost 6% accuracy, which is, when you combine that with the loss on there, you lost 26% increased accuracy, 50% increased damage if you took the mastery, and 15% increased attack speed, and you gained 3% attack speed back, so 12% attack speed loss. That is a big pile of stats you just lost. Oh boy, that is a lot. So the question is, does the one projectile make up for that? Well, we'll have to talk about that at the end of the video. All right, but it doesn't stop there. We also did lose a few other things. So the next thing we lost was the mastery for suppression. Now, pretty much everyone, league starter, end game, everyone took this mastery, and what it did was it gave you critical strike rating equal to your suppression amount. Now, being a ranger, you pretty much always had 100% spell suppression, even on day 2, day 1 of your build. Even as a beginner, rangers get spell suppression. That's kind of just how it goes. So you basically lost 100% increased critical strike. To kind of put that in perspective, that is a diamond flask, a permanent diamond flask that you just lost, or a Watcher's Eye modifier that you lost on your builds. It's definitely a lot, and if you actually do want to math it out, it works out to be about probably 7 to 8% crit on every single build that you just lost. So if you were at 100, you'd be at 92 now. If you were at 80, you'd be at 72, and you can see that's definitely very noticeable, very, very noticeable. So there's not a whole lot of ways to get that back. Not really. People were already kind of stretching to get that 100% crit. So definitely a pretty big damage nerf there. which is, a bit unfortunate, but, that's the way it goes. Adapt, overcome, evolve. Next up, we also do have some changes to the mark cluster here, which again was another bow fan favorite. Now, this one came into action a little bit later on your league starter, so it's not going to affect you in the early maps. It's not going to affect you in the yellow maps. It's going to affect you in the reds. When you get to those red maps and you're looking for that single target damage, this one will start to feel a little bit, kind of like, ooh. So what did we lose? Well, the small nodes here got changed to increase flask charges for you, which is, less than ideal. And what we lost for that was 20% increased damage as well as 10% increased mark effect. Now, the mark effect is the main part of the story here. That was a pretty big damage increase, like massive damage increase, I'm going to say it. And, that kind of sucks to lose, a bit unfortunate. But of course, we do have those extra arrows, man. So when you get to the mastery, though, this is kind of where it's kind of like a neutral point. They remove the 25% increased effect of marks option. Now, I personally didn't use that option, but I know a lot of people did. You can either go for the massive damage multiplier, which is that, or pretty much guaranteed 100% frenzy charge uptime. Now, I always went with the frenzy charge uptime, and I was feeling pretty good about it. But if you did go for the damage variant, you're basically forced into going for the frenzies now, which it's fine. I mean, as someone who played all my in-game builds, all my league starters, pretty much everything with the frenzies, it feels good. But the fact that you lose that option, I guess, could be construed as a nerf. All right, okay. So now that we've covered the adjustments, let's talk a little bit about how this is going to play out. We'll start out with league starters, as it's league start, man. We're gonna talk about that first. I think actually overall, with the transaction complete, pound for pound, with bows specifically in mind, not considering the new Vaal skill gems, it is a buff for bow league starters. And the reason for that is that the premier elemental bow league starter right now is Artillery Ballista, and it has some very important projectile breakpoints, which right now you're not actually able to hit very easily. The first one is getting the helmet enchant, which takes your projectiles from 6 to 8, which is a massive damage increase. And then the second one is going from 8 to 10, which is previously pretty easy to do, but then in 3.20 they made it much harder with the reduction in drop rate of the Splinter Jewel, which gave totems extra 2 projectiles. You can't really get that anymore in a league starter, so essentially giving that to us back. So you're going to be getting a ton of extra damage from those +2 projectiles, which is really, really good. And it's going to make your early league starting on the single target, especially in those early maps, feel pretty damn awesome. In addition to that, when you're doing stuff like breaches, when you're doing like tough parts of Legion, and like all sorts of stuff like abysses, you put those totems down as well, and it's going to increase your clear as well as the damage in those scenarios. So overall, that's going to feel pretty incredible. In addition to that, in the earlier parts of a league, before you get super juiced out of your mind, you're going to be using Lightning Arrow or Ice Shot alongside your Artillery Ballista, and it's going to be your very next destination as a bow build. After you get off of that league start gear, you're going to be investing a lot of your attention in beefing up your Lightning Arrow and your clear, and really making that the focus of your build. And in the beginning, when your character is just getting started, you do not have access to projectiles. You do not have access to Awakened GMP. You don't have access to a +2 bow, a +1 quiver, or any of that stuff like that. It's just incredibly difficult to acquire that early on, and it's never really worth it. And the cool thing is now you have access to +2 arrows, and it cannot be overstated enough just how much of an impact that has on your clear speed as a bow character. It's phenomenal amount of increase in terms of AoE. When you're considering doing stuff like legions or breaches or delirium or anything like that, it's substantial, like really, really big. And it's going to feel incredible to have those arrows early on. Basically, you start out with roughly 7 arrows as a lightning arrow build. So you get 2 from Deadeye, 4 from GMP, and 1 baseline. And now you're going to be going up to 9. So if you think about it, it's like a cone, and then it becomes like a full arc. That's kind of how it feels to play lightning arrow, and that's going to feel really good. Now, there is quite a lot of costs associated with allocating the second form of the projectile, which is here. And when you're playing in the early parts of the league, you're going to have a lot of spare skill points on a bow build because you don't have access to clusters, you don't have access to a massive thread of hope, and it's going to feel really easy to go ahead and grab that 4-pointer there and get that extra projectile. You're going to get some of that attack speed back that you just lost before, and it's going to feel really, really good. And you've obviously got the other one over there. Now, the only thing which happens when this transaction starts to come into effect in endgame, that's when it kind of starts to feel a little bit because your skill points are a massive resource for bows. Pretty much every point you take is like 8 to 10% more damage every point that you level up when you're on an endgame bow build. And investing 4 for, marginal gains on the 3 travel points, and then the multi-shot is it's a good multi, but it's nothing insane. It's just not going to be worth it, I don't think, in the end game. Even the most crazy builds, I don't think they're going to take this. Right now, I'm on the fence about it, and I'm leaning towards not taking it in the end game. It's something I'm going to respec out of. But yeah, it's not thrilling. I'm not thrilled by the prospect of spending 4 skill points here and having to drop sleight of hand or Will of Blades or anything like that, which comes from the massive threat of hope. Skill points are incredibly valuable to bow builds, and losing that for the extra projectile just doesn't feel like it's worth it when you've got the insane gear. Okay, so basically the TLDR of the video is that bows are going to feel way smoother, way better. They're going to get online way earlier in the early game. Your league starters, if you liked bows before, well, you're going to like them even more now in the league start. If you're an endgame player, that kind of sucks. You definitely got nerfed here. In a vacuum, if you're not considering Crucible, it is going to be a reduction in power. In addition to that, your top end also got cut a little bit. You're not going to be able to get that synthesized bow implicit, for the 2 people that get that, or that synthesized quiver implicit for the 3 people that get that. So that's definitely going to suck. But for the most part, let's refocus here on league starters. It is going to be a massive quality of life boost. So the league starter I'm personally playing and did play last league, I feel more confident about playing that this league because, those projectiles are going to be a big deal. They're going to make it so that I can farm stuff way earlier, way easier, and way smoother. And I am really excited about that. Now, in addition to that, we also do have to discuss these Vaal skills coming out. Now, I have no idea how good they're going to be. You really do have to get in there and play with them to really get a good understanding of what that's going to look like. But the most likely candidate for success is going to be Lightning Arrow, and that is because Lightning Arrow is just the mechanically superior skill. In addition to that, the Vaal variant also does look like it does have a little bit more potential for shotgunning and messing around with it, and the damage multipliers do look maybe a little bit better on that from what I can see so far. But it's going to take us getting in game and using it to really understand. So that is also going to be a buff in some capacity to that league start variant where you get on there, you've got Vaal Lightning Arrow now instead of normally Lightning Arrow, and when you get to a boss or when you get to a Legion General or when you get to anything, you just bang. It's just free damage. Why not? It's going to do something surely. So overall it's going to be a buff there, and maybe it makes your single target feel a little bit better. So you put down your totems, pop Vaal Lightning Arrow, smash it. Should be pretty good. It remains to be seen how impactful that will be. Best case scenario, it maybe is so good that you don't even have to run the totem setup anymore. Worst case scenario is it's 10% more damage, which is welcome anyway. You would run it. It's not like it's going to cost you Vaal souls that much in the grand scheme of things. You'll still be able to keep Vaal haste up. It's going to take an extra 2 seconds to charge at the start of the map. No big deal. All right, so now to round things out, I want to talk about Crucible trees, as a lot of the nerfs are pretty much going to be completely mitigated by the Crucible trees. They are a form of borrowed power, so we're going to probably lose them the league after this, and that's when you'll really feel bad about the nerfs. But this league, you don't really have to feel bad about them at all, because there is base critical strike chance on the tree, on the Crucible trees. We've seen it. It looks strong, and you can just get that on the bow. There's stuff like accuracy, there's stuff like attributes, which you can stack for Omni, so maybe you can respec Omni stuff in the late game. You don't need to take this anymore. Put those points in the extra projectile. You can get damage. There could be build defining nodes. It's not going to feel terrible. I'm pretty sure you're going to be able to get most of the power back, and more, substantially more from the Crucible trees. So if you're on the fence, oh man, don't want to play a nerfed build, just know that in a vacuum without the Crucible trees, it's probably stronger by quite a lot in the early game, and in the end game, considering Crucible trees, it's probably stronger there too, by quite a lot, I would imagine. And then the final note is that there could be potential for the new bow to be pretty damn strong. Still running the numbers on that. You can expect a video on that coming probably pretty soon if it looks good. And if that is a unique which is accessible in the earlier parts of the league, that could really smooth out the progression of bows and make it very competitive as a league starter. So overall, that's going to be the video, guys. Hope you guys enjoyed. If you're wondering about bows, definitely go for it. I can highly recommend recommend it. It's got great 1 to 10 act leveling, and it's really, really nice in the early game of maps as well. The only weakness I would say of the build is that it does struggle a little bit with the pinnacle bosses unless you are mechanically gifted. Unfortunately, I'm not. I'm going to be buying those TFT carries with the rest of you. But anyway, I digress. Hopefully you guys enjoyed. I will be streaming on Twitch for League Start, so definitely check that out. And also, if you enjoy the video, subscribe and like so YouTube knows that it's a good video. And until next time, cheers.